Okay, good afternoon everybody. Really nice to see you all. Thank you for joining this emerging tech panel session. My name is Sophie James and I'm Head of Telecoms and Spectrum Policy here at techUK, so leading both our telecoms and spectrum work streams. And I am delighted to be moderating this panel as part of our Tech and Innovation Summit. Our session has been designed to explore in a bit more detail what the current opportunities are around the adoption of specific technologies. We want to show how industry, academia and government are working together to push forward innovative and exciting new discoveries. Plus, we want to dive into the implications these may have for UK society and the economy. I think we can all agree, well, I hope we can all agree, that innovation and the application of emerging technologies are empowered and enabled by the latest connectivity solutions. And we're talking about all solutions here, so dedicated high capacity fixed lines, we're talking about private 5G, even satellite, LEO and more, okay? So all's included. And our discussion today, we want to shine a spotlight on the latest solutions make an impact. So use cases across the whole of the UK and beyond. And we want to also take a look at how the advances in comms technology is building a really bright future for business connectivity too. We want to look at the ways in which solution providers are helping their customers kind of make the business case for investing in connectivity. I think that's really important. And of course, the kind of standout benefits of why adopting advanced connectivity across the UK is so crucial. So really delighted now to welcome our speakers. So we have John Alloy, who's Head of Public and Third Sector Growth from NEOS Networks. We're also joined by Chris Silberberg, who's an analyst at IDC, and Nanda Menon, who is Senior Advisor, Worldwide Strategic Pursuits from the Athernet Business Unit of HPE. So welcome to the stage. Thank you so much. Cool. We will have time at the end for some questions from the floor, so get those brains whirring. I know it's just after lunch, but really do want to make sure we give you all an opportunity to talk to our panellists. But welcome all. Thank you so much. And just to say, we will finish at 2:45. I know we're running slightly behind time, but that's totally fine. Okay, so John, can I come to you first?
Of course, yeah.
Just tell us a bit about kind of your role at NEOS, and yeah, how you're enabling innovation through technology, connectivity.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, so my name's John Alloy. I head up our kind of public sector team looking after kind of everything we do engagement within to the public sector with focus across kind of all of the different sectors that kind of come within that. We here at NEOS, we really specialise in delivering ultra high capacity, ultra kind of low latency and secure, reliable comms. And so that we sell into a number of sectors. So obviously I look after the public sector. We also work extensively with a lot of the other telcos. So even down to one of the mobile networks, we provide all of its radio access kind of backhaul connectivity. And we run that network all across the country. In fact, one of the only people to have any significant presence in Scotland.
Awesome, thank you. And John, just quickly, because I know we do really want to look at some use cases, and I sort of mentioned academia in my opening, but could you just tell us a bit about what NEOS is doing and enabling in the academic sector?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been working with JISC for the last 20 odd years now, where we deliver a lot of the underlying network that Janet runs over. So really what it does is it enables all of those academic organisations to be able to collaborate and talk to each other in ways that they simply wouldn't be able to if they didn't have that kind of high capacity kind of capability of talking. Certainly, as we start to, from the theme of this session, as we start to look at kind of new and emerging technologies where kind of the use of data is only going one direction, it's going to be exponential as we start deploying some of these kind of new and emerging technologies, it's really important that academia have that ability to make sure that the right people can work on given projects regardless of where they're physically located. So by being able to have those kind of interoperability and inter kind of collaboration between those academic establishments is absolutely key.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. Nanda, can I come to you next? Bit about your role at HPE and what you're offering at the moment.
Sure. So I see many familiar faces here who know me from the Athernet days. Athernet was acquired just a few months ago by Hewlett-Packard. As you know, Athernet led the development of the private 5G industry, and we're now part of Hewlett-Packard, which does not only Wi-Fi, so we have the convergence of private 5G and Wi-Fi. You'd have also seen that we've just invested into Aleph Alpha, which is the OpenAI competitor from Europe, and of course it's got a long history in supercomputing as well. So it's a really exciting place to be, where we're seeing this new world where we've got the convergence of 5G, Wi-Fi, supercomputing, and AI, and it's really exciting to be the center of that. I'm responsible for strategic pursuits, which is looking at how we can take 5G, which is what Athernet is good for, and integrate that with everything else that's happening in HPE and the world.
Brilliant. Again, some of the use cases, I know we've discussed some recent ones. Any ones you want to describe to us? And
Gosh, quite a few. So the most immediate one that's probably easy to visualize for people is the convergence of 5G and Wi-Fi. So one of the first things we did at HPE, if you're a golf fan and you were looking at the Ryder Cup, this was the first time this year that you actually had a combined 5G and Wi-Fi network spread out across the entire golf course, where broadcasters were able to broadcast. So in the past, because you can't run cable around a golf course, they were fixed in terms of where they could actually be. So now you had roving cameras that were able to rove and broadcast from wherever they wanted.
Cool.
Wi-Fi was limited to a few places because Wi-Fi always needs backhaul and you can't have cable running across a golf course. But now we were able to cover the whole golf course with Wi-Fi and use 5G as the backhaul for that. So VIPs, media, people, bloggers, etc., were able to get that sort of coverage as well. And then there was a heck of a lot of data that was taken from different points of the golf course and put together for the pros, etc. So that's a really tangible example of something that we put together. I'll talk a little bit later. I'll give somebody else a chance. But we talked a lot about quantum computing this morning, and I'd like to talk later on about what we're doing on quantum and also in healthcare. But
we would love to. Thank you so much, Nanda. And I'm not a golf fan per se, but I'm absolutely a fan of that connectivity solution. So thanks you for painting that picture for us. And so finally, Chris, welcome. Thank you so much. Just introduce you and your role, and that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie, and thank you very much for having me here today. So I am a research manager at IDC as part of our EMEA Telco Insights programme. So my role is to look at the big transformation topics for telcos across the EMEA region, so both from a technology perspective, so integration, evolution and use of cloud systems and networking, also AI, but then also in terms of business transformation as well. So what are they doing in terms of their talent needs, for organisational structure and their business structure in terms of what are the opportunities that they're focusing on and pursuing.
Great. And so appreciate you being here today, Chris, because we're getting that kind of wider view across the whole kind of market. And I guess, obviously, we're here in the UK, we are techUK, but perhaps from a global perspective, what are some of the trends that you're seeing and any insight you're getting from your research?
So back in the summer, we ran our annual Future of Connectivity survey. So this is enterprise focus, looking at what do they really want out of their connectivity providers, what is really important to them, where are they looking to invest in. And I think some of the key things which came out from a global perspective, what are they wanting from connectivity? So it's increased operational efficiency, it's improved customer satisfaction, and it's also improved employee productivity. So it's less innovation per se, but it's those kind of outcomes. Actually, in the subset, which is indicative for the UK, faster innovation was one of the top outcomes they were looking for, alongside improved customer satisfaction and also increased sustainability.
Yeah, love that. Well, I suppose yeah, if you're more efficient and more productive, I suppose innovation is sort of a happy byproduct, I suppose, for those businesses. But yeah, thanks, Chris. That's really fantastic. I think we could talk more about some of the kind of absolute benefits and use cases, but I think I do just want to be a bit realistic here as well, because sometimes advanced connectivity, it's a huge investment challenge and making that business case. But yeah, John, I think, can I come to you on what you're sort of seeing in the market at the moment? And
yeah, I think that point about the kind of investment case is really pertinent. We are obviously seeing a really significant shift in the way finance is coming into telcos, and actually we're really seeing a slowdown in investment into telco, with the expectation now that actually what we really need to start seeing is that those investments start seeing return. So we've seen a lot of the altnets have put huge amounts of fibre into the ground. The UK is absolutely peppered now with lots of kind of high capacity fibre, but actually not much of it's been bought. And really what the investors are really now looking for is making sure that they stop building so much and actually now start really monetising the assets that have already gone into the ground. That is going to continue to be a focus for some time. And really there needs to be a realistic expectation around what is available, what it will do, what it won't do. There are fibre's fibre, but actually the way in which it's run, the type of organisation that delivers it, will have different impacts. So it's really important that you understand when you're looking to kind of buy that kind of enhanced connectivity and what it's going to be used for, and really what's important from it, so that you make sure that the organisation that you get it for will meet those use cases and really help deliver what's important. Because, not all fibre is born equal.
Good, great point. Yeah. Nanda, do you see this sort of similar on the investment side?
Yeah, so this is where the use cases come in, because I think a lot of investment in the last few years has been, let's put this broadband connectivity in there, whether it's fibre, whether it's Wi-Fi for the last 100 yards, or 5G, LTE, the macro network. Why do we need this? I had a very practical example this weekend about how the availability of connectivity is changing the way that the NHS, for example, does things, driving productivity and tangible use cases. So we had an emergency in the family, and we had to call an ambulance. The ambulance turned up, and I'd had a similar occasion 10 years ago, so I remember, what that experience was like. But this time they turned up with laptops, tablets, video kit, etc. And they were able to come in, log in, and on the tablet get the patient, all the historical records of the patient from the NHS, do a triage, upload the data onto their systems so that someone remotely who was an expert was able to look at, and then do a video call, a video triage with the correct specialist. Whereas in the old days, they would have just taken you straight to A&E, and that may not have been the right solution for you, because if you're a heart attack victim or a stroke victim, the specialist units. So you need to do that triage. Now here's the interesting thing: all of this is set up to work on the macro network, and it works really well on 4G, right? But the minute you come in building, that doesn't work, right? So we had to enable them with Wi-Fi, and it made me begin to think, well, I've got great Wi-Fi with fiber.
Yeah.
Right? But what happens to someone who's in a rural area or in a small town? Right? So it really made me think about this, the broadband infrastructure. In some ways, it's even more important than electricity, because if the electricity wasn't there, the router wouldn't work, but maybe be powered from the mains. But if you didn't have the connectivity, they would not have been able to do that triage. And if someone's having a heart attack or a stroke or a major incident, every minute counts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's a real practical example of how everything came together. And incidentally, the ambulance crew were telling me this was yesterday, to that day, the network had gone down, and we were back to the old walkie-talkie, and how it just backed everything up, and productivity and efficiency, and impact on patients.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is a real tangible example of how connectivity and broadband can really really change life outcomes for people.
That's so true. And I think it is really important for us to note that the connectivity itself isn't what's crucial there. It's the technologies that sit on top of it to enable that. So it's the platform for video calling, or it's the diagnostics.
So which is why for me now personally, I want to make sure that everybody has access to broadband, because it's not just for making a WhatsApp call. It's really critical when you have a medical emergency that the ambulance crews do have access to connectivity. It's a fundamental right.
Yeah, and that seamless connectivity, I think we've been talking about, wanted to shine a bit of light on where the future's going. I mean, Chris, for you, are these technologies, I don't know, are they going off in different directions? Are they coming together? Is there collaboration? What are you kind of seeing at IDC on?
So I think building on Nanda's point there around the convergence of Wi-Fi, cellular, fibre, also particularly now that we're seeing more and more investment and scale up in LEO satellite. Yeah. So I think by next year, end of next year, Elon Musk with Starlink will have pretty much finished his satellite build. So that's coverage everywhere. We'll also be starting to launch even more high capacity like communications. So the coverage aspect will be pretty much there. It's then becomes, how do you make that seamless, to Nanda's point, of really getting it all to work together. And I think there's impetus to try and understand how that can do that. Yeah. So continuing that example of Starlink, they've inked deals with T-Mobile, also service providers in different geographies, trying to start building foundations for that more seamless interworking. But there's still a little bit of time to go before it is truly seamless. Yeah, no, absolutely. Fantastic, thanks, Chris. Just a reminder, do really want some questions from the audience, so please do get them prepped. We'll come to you. We were just talking actually about, it's quite timely for us to have this conversation because it's WRC coming up, so the World Radio Communications Conference, and that's a big moment in which some spectrum decisions are made. But I wanted to talk to Nanda, you've got real sight of this in terms of how crucial spectrum is, the availability of it, and what it can unlock and enable. If you just want to expand on that.
Yeah, so the UK has done something truly amazing. It's really led the world in making the 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz band available to private enterprise. So it's the first big meaningful chunk of 5G spectrum that was dedicated towards private enterprise, and it's a massive amount. So the question is, after having done that, how do we make sure that we actually get a dividend from having made that available to enterprise? And one of the biggest challenges you have is access to devices, right? And radios, ecosystems, getting things approved so that they can be deployed in country. And enterprises on their own don't have the capability to get all of that organized. You need the scale of the mobile operators behind it, which is what the US has done so well. I mean, the mistake they made was they went for LTE rather than 5G. But the great thing that they did, even though it was pushed really by Google, they realized that without the operators, they were not going to have an ecosystem. So they got the operators to play in that band as well. So which is why in our suggestions to Ofcom, what we've said is that of that 400 megahertz, you can take the top end of it, the far end of it, and actually give that to mobile operators and say, use this band to run a public service, right, for your normal MNO service, but with strings attached. If you want that spectrum, you've got to allow interconnection to private networks on that band. You've got to make sure that the devices are open and that the radios that are also available to any enterprise that wants to deploy. And you can have neutral hosts. So if you're in a building and you want to deploy the private your private spectrum and have all 4 mobile operators in there, that they will give you connectivity for it. So that is really the recommendation that we put forward, and it's my personal view as well, that in that band, we've got 400 megahertz, keep 300 megahertz for industry, academia, innovation, but give 100 megahertz to mobile operators on the condition that they allow interoperability, availability of devices, and everything else.
Yeah, really interesting. Thanks.
I just want to also just...
Of course, yeah,
quantum,
please.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about was also, we had the session earlier in terms of quantum computing, and we just talked about how more and more stuff is being done over networks. Now, use the example of the NHS, this biometric data, all of this stuff going all over this. And not a lot of thought is being given to the security behind that. I mean, today we use shared key infrastructure, but within a few years, quantum computing will be able to cut through all of that. And everyone thinks, hey, that's 10 years down the line. But just imagine if there's a threat actor who's just recording all of this stuff. I mean, your biometric information is going to last with you for the next 30, 40 years. So someone can take all of that data today of a mobile network or any network and store it. And in 5 years' time, when quantum computing is available, with the brute force capability to crack that, they can just go back and get, everybody's biometric data, right? And no one's thinking about that. So, which is one of the things that we've just done is to launch the world's first mobile network that is quantum safe. We're actually running quantum safe encryption across the mobile network. And we're doing that together with a partner called ARKit, which is, again, this is funded by the UK government. So this is something that we get people to think about. The quantum threat is not something that is 5 years down the line. I think someone used the example of, it's like you're walking down a street and suddenly this truck comes up before you and you don't have time to react. Well, it's not just that. This is a truck that can actually back up and hit you, right? And that's what people don't think. All of this data, if it's sensitive government data, if you're a threat actor from another country, and you can't break the encryption, you can just you can capture the traffic today and just store it, right? If you're the prime minister or a sensitive, you can just you can capture all of the data and keep it. And you know what? 5 years down the line, we'll go back and there we go. We've just got all the nuclear codes, right?
Hopefully not.
Well, hopefully not. No. But it's a very serious threat.
Absolutely. I mean, John, I'm sure for you and your customers, security is absolutely central.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that we continue to talk about with government is actually one of the things I think government are doing really well is the way that they are actually trying to move away from kind of creating walled gardens of, they were building bespoke networks that were just our little playground, nobody else gets to play in it. Very secure, but also meant that actually it wasn't really available to be interoperated between departments.
Yeah.
It was absolutely not kind of, you got no competition within those sorts of things. It was a one-off, and then who won it, won it. Actually, government is doing a really good job of trying to introduce further competition, break down those kind of walled gardens, and really creating a more open environment where they're securing the data rather than the network. So actually, the network itself doesn't need, the network itself needs to be secure and safe and transfer the data, but actually it doesn't limit so much as to who can provide that. Whereas when you've got very, very prescriptive kind of procurements of you must do this, 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 and this, actually by default you're going to get one or two bidders anyway. By moving the other way around and say, we will deal with all of that side of it, you provide us with kind of the advanced connectivity, we'll provide you the spec of what we need, but not necessarily how you deliver it. That makes a really big difference. And we're already starting to see a lot more competition coming in from actually being less prescriptive around what you deliver and more prescriptive around actually what we want as an outcome.
Love that, outcomes based. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, John. Chris, your thoughts on the security of connectivity?
So I think, just to add to what Nanda and John have said, it is paramount in terms of what we're seeing. Every survey we come back, whether it's also on the telecoms operator side or also on the enterprise side, is network security, cyber security is the top worry, top challenge for them, and also having to lead to increased investment. So that's the first thing. I think, to John, what you were kind of saying there, and Nanda as well, about how do you drive scale, though, so you can bring innovation.
Yeah.
So also, it's not just innovation in terms of new things you can do, but also innovation in terms of how do you respond to threat actors as well.
Nice.
Have a more proactive... That is something we are starting to see more discussions about. But yeah, in a summary, it is absolutely paramount.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. You know, the more sophisticated the threat will be and can be in the future, pushes you to be more innovative, right, in your solutions. Great. Okay, thank you all so much. I'm going to pause now. Your chance to pose a question to the floor. Does anyone want to raise their hand? Ask a question? Is everyone being shy? Everyone's being shy. I can't believe it. Okay, fine. Well, I've got a question here at the front. Fantastic, thank you. We'll get a mic coming down to you. Margaret, it's just this gentleman here, thank you.
Yeah, a question for John, I think. Do you have any insight into what might be causing the low uptake in fibre? Is it related to some of the issues around user demand, or is it more of an infrastructure?
I think actually a large part of it, actually, there has been the focus on really attracting consumer demand. Actually, really, there's been the expectation, we'll put it there and everybody will be biting our hands off. The fact it hasn't just happened organically is why we're now seeing the altnets actually focusing on customer acquisition. They weren't previously. They just weren't. They were assuming it would come through the door. They were focused on building. And that's really where the difference is there's now a much greater focus on customer acquisition.
So to put some numbers on that, in terms of, I think this is a number from Nokia, what they reckon is the break-even point for fibre in the ground. They say it's about 30% uptake. I think for some altnates, the cost structure is probably that you can do a bit less. But from what we've seen reported in the market, maybe some of these are around 20, 25%. So it's still pretty low. And
yeah,
John, specifically to that point, they haven't been focusing on that acquisition part.
Nice. Thank you very much for that question. Yeah, at the back here in the blue shirt. Thank you.
In a couple of the morning panels, there was a comment on connectivity on trains and infrastructure, and they were saying that the link between Paris and Rome get perfect connectivity, but between London and Cambridge, you don't. From a connectivity perspective, why is that, and what needs to happen to change that in the UK?
That's a really good question. Trains and connectivity. John, you can.
I can probably take a bit of this. I've been working with kind of trains and connectivity probably for the last 15 years. Worked really closely with Network Rail over kind of many years on this. I think the problem's been that the business case in the UK has never been cracked. Building connectivity across the railway is incredibly expensive. In fact, it is one of the things that we at NEOS are doing. We're currently working with Network Rail to actually build out and commercialise that asset that will actually allow them to then kind of really drive fibre connectivity up and down along the rails that will then open up the ability for others to do it. I think the problem is it's really expensive to build on the railway compared to building in the field. It's possibly also slightly easier in some ways because once you've got the ability to do it, it's really easy because there's a trough, you drop it down, seal it off, it's fine. You've not got lots of digging, you've not got loads of way leaves to have to deal with, etc. But it's really expensive. And the use case historically has always been, it's great, the mobile networks will pay for it because their customers will. They won't. They absolutely won't. There's no value for the mobile networks to go and do this. And I'm seeing some nods there, which definitely, we've looked at these time and time again. My background prior to being at NEOS, I was at Telefonica for many years. And there is no uptick in value, it is just additional cost. And that's really what the current model where they're looking at is actually, we're going to be looking at taking on the whole thing into consideration. We will build to demand, and that will allow actually have multiple customers or kind of multiple telcos, multiple users that will each have that kind of same requirement, will be able to share the cost. That will then potentially make it more viable. All the time that the expectation is, everybody needs it, I can guarantee you will not pay more for your mobile phone bill just because you're going to get connectivity on the train. And that's the problem.
But this is where shared spectrum can make a difference. Because if the railways or any independent third party could put up that network on shared spectrum, and we have the framework that we were discussing, they could monetize it by roaming, by having offload to the mobile network and being able to be compensated for that, and you can even have your own SIM just for the railways, so that people could pay a subscription. You could just have an eSIM that works only on the railway.
And just to build an enterprise use case on top of that in terms of why is it really good to have connectivity on the network. So something Telefonica has been doing in Spain has been doing some innovative use cases with drones. So do drone monitoring of the railway tracks.
Cool.
Anything goes wrong, they can send it out, do that, try and identify the problem sooner. So to your point, Nanda, if you're building the infrastructure to support that use case, it's great if you've got an additional benefit.
So if you look back, you'll see that we actually did a 5G private network for for high speed 1 in St Pancras for operational use.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can't open that up to the public to use for all these other reasons.
We could have not least a panel, but a whole conference on train connectivity. It's so fascinating. There's multiple angles to it. It's technological, business model, regulatory, so many things. And I know that there was recently a passenger survey and everyone thought, oh, no one cares about connectivity, but it's because the first question was, what's the most important thing to you? And it was that my train runs on time. So we've got a couple more questions, I think. No, you're all good. Anyone else? Another question here on the...
It's just a comment from me.
Yes?
In relation to this, I think I come from Scandinavia originally. I've been here 25 years, but I just second I think the European side have, when they outsourced all the networks, they put the mandate on the mobile providers to actually provide this. And I don't think Network Rail will sell more train tickets, but the network provider who can deliver the connectivity probably will get a better foot in the market.
Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, just another question here. Thank you.
Hello, Mike Lewis from the West Midlands Grove Company. My question is, when do you think we'll see the first deployment of 6G in the UK, and what will the benefits be over and above what 5G can offer?
Brilliant. Again, another conference topic we've got there, Mike. Great, thank you for the question. Do you want to take that one?
I'd say that as an industry, we're all better off monetizing 5G and making sure that it works.
If I was to add to that, I think you've talked to BT, Telefonica, any of the major operators. If they have to deploy 6G, they want it to be a software update.
Definitely.
They don't want it to be another massive hardware layout. That said, if you look at the history of network rollouts, they say 3G was a rubbish one, 4G was a good one. So maybe what we'll get for 6G is just for benefits of 5G. So let's monetize it first.
Yeah, odds and evens is the rule, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, but here's if you're looking at the odds and evens, there was 5G NSA, which was the bastardized model. So 5G actually, in my view, skips that. Because
5G standalone.
An intermediate one.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Because 5G standalone was the bastardized solution, which hopefully we're all going to count. Which is the 3G of the in that 3G.
John?
I think the thing that's really important to understand is why is it needed? When will it be needed? If 3G, everything that was promised was 3G was finally delivered probably at the back end of 4G. The utopia of what it could do. 5G has still got so much more that it can deliver that's not even touching the surface yet of what's out in the market. So actually, I don't think there is necessarily the rush to see 6G in the market. The use cases aren't there. The use cases aren't even there for 5G properly yet. They're still being deployed. They're still being rolled out. We're a long way away from needing anything beyond 5G.
I mean, the big transition that mobile networks had to do was to go from from analog. We then went to digital, and then had to go to all IP. And in 4G, we kind of got there, and then in 5G, you move towards a microservices architecture. So that whole migration, I think, from telco world to an IT type of IP-based infrastructure has happened. So from that point of view, there's no real technological driver to go towards 6G other than somebody wants to sell more kit.
Yeah. And I think in terms of, if we talk about outcomes, hopefully it's whatever 6G is, it's delivers on reducing energy use and closing that digital divide is probably the ultimate ambition. Okay, final question.
Matters to Nokia and Ericsson, but not to anybody else.
Final question. One right at the back. Got your hand raised. Thanks, Margot.
So rather than 60G, what do you think about small cell and Open RAN then as a chance to redesign our networks, both private and public networks?
Great question. Small cells and Open RAN.
So that would be, so in private networks, so Open RAN is really, I'd say, a macro network solution and less obvious. Its use case is less obvious for private networks because of the complexity, cost, etc. So there's a high threshold that you need to get over to be able to deploy Open RAN profitably, at least with today's technology and cost structure. So most private networks are probably not at that level yet where you justify it. But macro networks probably, and maybe one of the things that you could do is, if you license this spectrum to operators, is to mandate that percentage of it has to be Open RAN. But again, should you really get involved in what technology?
There is a sort of ambition for Open RAN traffic to be a third, I think, in a few years. But and for small cells, I suppose you've got things like JOTS and in building. Any thoughts on Open RAN or?
I was just going to really add to that. Again, it comes back to the use cases that are going to really need these things to make them work. Why invest in it if you've not got the right use case? We're past the world of speculative investment in kind of mobile technology. Actually, really what we need to start seeing is that actually there is a solid use case that is worth making that investment model go through. Because as it stands, if I think back to my days at Telefonica, we spent probably 3 or 4 years prior to launching 5G services really trying to engage with the market to find out what are they going to do with it, because we didn't see any reason to spend the money.
Okay.
And these things have to be worth the investment. So the business case is really important.
Thanks. Chris?
And I think just building on the Open RAN and the wider perspective, if we look at the UK, what has been the key driver for Open RAN, particularly for some of the bigger macro network players? It's been about suppliers and supplier base, and trying to think about, okay, if we have to remove some suppliers because of macroeconomic, geopolitical situations, other elements of security, what do we replace them with? Because if we just go down to the usual suspects in terms of Nokia, Ericsson, they're already in a lot of our network already. So if one of those, as unthinkable as it may sound, were to fail, what do we have then to replace them? So that's an element, I think, in that Open RAN macro network side. Also, I think there are some of those smaller players who've come into the market because they've seen this opportunity to also see that as a way for them to use it to say that Open RAN also has a stake into private networks, into more enterprise networking. But there is an element to that is still a developing ecosystem, so it needs to get to scale for it to be the kind of go-to option.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Look, we could go on, but I'm conscious of time and we've got a fantastic presentation coming up. So I would just like to say a huge thank you to you all for listening, but also specifically Nanda, John and Chris for speaking today. Thank you all so much.